Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll learn to become a better, more business-savvy designer so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Gratzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm talking about how you can get taken more seriously as a designer instead of being treated like an order taker. Stick around because I've got lots of tips that will help you get more respect, get less pushback, make more money, and stand out from other designers. It can be so hard to get clients or coworkers to take you more seriously as a designer, and you often feel like you're the order taker. Do this, do that, Cinderella. But there are a lot of things that you can do that will affect how you're treated. And it starts with you and how you manage the relationship. So let's get into some helpful tips that you can use to get taken more seriously and seen as more of the trusted expert. The first one is have processes. Processes are one way to show that you're a true professional because they say, I do this work and I know what's involved with this type of work and here's how it needs to get done. And it also says that you mean business and that you're not winging it every time. And then where there isn't a process, the client will try to dictate. Now, you can have processes for how you handle sales calls and how you onboard clients. And the earlier that you can demonstrate that you have these processes, the better, because that will position you as an expert from the start of the process. And that's key at the beginning of any new relationship. And it's also very difficult to change how you're perceived later on. Now, a process could also include how you want potential clients to schedule a call with you, and if you want them to first fill out a form. And it could also be how you handle taking payments. And I went into a lot of detail about these things in episode 8, which was improve your processes and your client's experience. So be sure to check that out. But you can also have processes that state how you prefer to receive files, what types of files you need, processes for different types of work, and then how you want to get feedback on design proofs. Number 2 is set expectations. Setting expectations lets clients know that they can trust you, and you're also putting them at ease, and you're taking control of the situation. It kind of reminds me, this is totally off topic, but it kind of reminds me of when we adopted an aggressive lab mix. We didn't know he was aggressive when we adopted him. And he was 5 years old when we adopted him. And this was the first time we ever even had more than one dog at a time. We quickly realized that he was food aggressive. And he would scarf his food and he would growl at us when we were feeding him. And he was sometimes aggressive with other dogs. He also pulled on the leash. But after training with a dog trainer, everything changed. And of course, dog training is usually more for the pet parents, not the dog. But the training reinstated me and my husband as the pack leaders. And the trainer said that our dog was stressed out because he felt the need to be the pack leader. And after the training, he stopped growling when we went to feed him. And he stopped scarfing his food. And he stopped fighting with our other dogs. And he stopped pulling on the leash. He was totally relaxed. And it's similar with clients. If they don't know what to expect and when it's going to happen, then they might get anxious. And they might start asking questions like, when will you have the design proof ready? Or are you going to get the project done on time? So if you let them know what to expect and when to expect it, it actually puts them at ease and it instills confidence. Now, setting expectations also is about setting boundaries because you're saying, this is how I do business. And if you want to do business with me, this is how I work. So create a list of your must-haves and create a list of deal breakers. Your must-haves, especially for any new clients, should be getting a signed contract and money up front. And deal breakers might be late payments or ignoring late fees. And then you want to include these things in your proposals or your contracts, because if a client breaks one of your rules, you want to address it with them or fire them. Now you might be saying, but Colleen, that sounds like I'm making it harder for clients to work with me. But you're not actually. You're making it easier and you'll get more respect. My third tip is sell the results, not the work. When most clients come to you, they're looking for a price for a particular project, right? Most designers are going to go ahead and give them an estimate right then, or shortly after the call, or an email from them. But you need to change the conversation to get the focus off price because you need to understand a lot more in order to really price things properly, So you want to start out by asking them about their goals. What are they trying to accomplish with this work? What business problem are they looking to solve? And how has this been costing them by not addressing it yet? This shows that you're not just designing something that looks good, but you're also saying, I'm looking to get results for you from my work. And it shows that you're interested in them and not just creating another piece of design work for your portfolio. It also shows that you're a business person who should be taken more seriously. But the other thing is that oftentimes clients come to us thinking that they know what they need. And what they think they need isn't always correct. And so once you talk to them and find out more, you might determine that what they were thinking they should do really isn't the right solution for them. And when you alert them to that, that gives you a unique opportunity that will put you in front of other designers who aren't asking these questions and who are just providing what the client is asking for. So for example, we once had an electrician friend come to our house and he took a look at an outlet in our garage. We had been keeping a chest freezer in there, but the outlet would short out during thunderstorms. And we lost hundreds of dollars of food in there a couple of times. And we thought it was a faulty outlet. Well, when he showed up and looked into it more, he said the problem was actually not the outlet, but another outlet connected to it outside the house that was getting water in it when it rained really hard. So what we thought was the problem really wasn't. The expert figured out the real problem. Number 4 is know your worth. A lot of designers are afraid that their pricing will turn off potential clients. And as I always say, that doesn't mean you want to price low. Low pricing attracts cheap clients, and they usually end up being bad clients because they're the ones that are going to interrogate you about every design decision, and they're just looking for a deal, and they really don't value the work or your expertise. And low pricing can make you lose out on more projects. I can't tell you how many times that's happened. I've lost projects more based on low price in the past than for being priced too high. But the other thing is that you've got to know that pricing is more than just your time. I mean, you could say, oh, well, the client could just Google how to do this. Yeah, they could. That's if they wanted to do that in the first place. Most clients are not looking for a how-to. And looking up how to do something doesn't give you the intricacies of all the things that you need to take into consideration with a particular project. It doesn't replace real-world experience. But even if they know how to do something, that doesn't mean that they have the time or the interest in doing the work. They have other things that they need to focus on. And they might be looking for a guide, somebody who knows how to solve their problems and is confident about that and being able to help them. Think about how valuable your time, your knowledge, and the convenience to them is. Because expertise takes years to accumulate. It's like an investment over time. It's like an investment of your time over time learning this stuff. Okay, my next tip is present your work as the solution. Present your design work and why you designed it a certain way. I mean, you can get into why you chose those typefaces or colors, why you used large margins, etc. But you don't need to get into a full-on artistic critique. You just want to show that a lot of thought and meaning went into the design that takes into consideration their needs. And this could be based on research of their target audience. It could be based on visual design theories. But pretty much the point is that everything in the design should have a reason for why it looks like it does, and that should align with their objectives. Back up design decisions with facts, not feelings. So for example, you could say, I chose a darker shade of blue here to help you convey trust to your audience. I know that's important to you. I chose brighter colors that are more appealing to your audience of teens to 20-somethings because I know you're trying to reach a younger crowd. I used a larger text size since you serve an older audience. These are all objective and they're hard to argue with, as opposed to saying, I picked blue because I like it, or maybe because they like blue, or this is my favorite font and I wanted to use it. And when you go to present your work, you should also be confident about it. This is much easier to do when you have objective facts and research rather than personal opinions and preferences as the basis for those design decisions. And then it's not an argument about different people's opinions. But what's also vital when presenting your work, and this doesn't matter if you email them a proof or you show them a proof in person or present it in a virtual meeting, but never ask what they think. Okay, so imagine if you had a plumber come out to fix your kitchen sink. And what if when he was done, he said to you, well, what do you think? Wouldn't that make you feel like, wow, why did I hire this guy? He doesn't seem to know what he's doing, or he doesn't seem to be confident about his work, right? It would cause doubt. It would cause confusion. And experts present solutions, and that's what clients are looking for. Number 6 is express your opinion. Sometimes clients or coworkers might request something that you don't think is a good idea. And it might be because they just want it that way, or the CEO wants it that way, or whatever. And many designers are shy to speak up in these situations because they're afraid the client will get offended or won't like what you have to say. And you might say, well, they're paying me, so I should just comply with their requests. Look, I get it. I've been there and done that. But the fact that you're getting paid means that you have all the more reason to express your professional opinion. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that you should shove your opinion down their throat. You can only do so much, right? It's still ultimately up to them to make a decision. But it's your job as an expert to warn them of any potential problems with what they might have in mind or why it's not a good idea. Otherwise, you could just silently sit back, right, and comply, and then maybe something does happen down the road, and they come back and ask you why you didn't say anything. So I've always just said, here's my professional opinion as to why I don't think this is a good idea or why this won't help you. Sure, they could suggest something that will totally muck up the design, but you've got to leave personal feelings out of it and focus on how that would muck up the design, right? So it wouldn't be appealing to their audience. It wouldn't be accessible to individuals with visual disabilities or something else. And in some cases, you might want to get in writing that the client isn't taking your advice. I mean, you wouldn't say it that way, obviously. You would just put it in writing in an email or even have them sign something depending on how serious it is. You know, like if it's a legal or accessibility concern, maybe they decide to proceed or not with X, Y, and Z, although you recommended otherwise. Tip number 7 is get recognized as an authority. So speaking of expressing your opinion, it really helps you get recognized as an authority and to build trust with prospects and others in your industry when you answer questions in a Facebook group where your colleagues or potential clients hang out, or you write blog posts on your own website, you do guest blog posts on other people's sites, you write articles on LinkedIn or Medium, or you even speak at a meetup. Now, I know you're probably cringing. I used to be absolutely terrified of all of this stuff, and they were on my never-do list. Now, I started by writing blog posts and sharing them on LinkedIn. And then I got into Facebook groups, and I realized that people actually appreciated my insights. I mean, I didn't think that they would, but they did. I didn't know what to think. And then in 2018, I got into podcasting for this business, not my client business. And that helped me get in front of a new audience who had no idea who I was. But all of the writing and the speaking has helped me in both businesses. And when you do these kinds of things, prospects will see them and they'll appreciate, maybe you have a particular approach, or they'll appreciate your knowledge on the subject. It's also the first way for them to get to know you a bit. And it can make you memorable, especially if you talk about the same topic and you become known as that person. Ever since I got into accessibility in 2016 and started talking about that one thing, not only to others privately, but also on my podcast and other podcasts and at events, I've become known for it. So whatever clients you serve best, whatever their industry is, these are great ways to get in front of them and get noticed. And when you get recognized as an authority, clients and even potential employers come to you. They already know that they want to work with you, and it's easier to get work. Now, engaging in online groups and writing and speaking not only get you in front of your audience, but they'll help you stand out from other designers. So if it comes down to a generalist designer versus a designer who specializes in their particular area, who do you think is going to get the work? Who do you think they're going to be willing to pay more to? Now, you can also build authority by getting certifications in certain areas. These will build trust and show that you take what you do seriously and that you actually invested time and money in a course or a class to get certified. I think certifications are great, but some designers feel the need to get a whole bunch of certifications just to make them feel worthy. And sometimes that's an obstacle I think that they subconsciously put up to delay themselves from having a put themselves out there. Like, well, I won't offer brand strategy as a service until I have a certification in it, or whatever it might be. Or I won't do this until I have this certification. Now, this next one can be the hardest one, and especially because so many creatives are sensitive types and even people pleasers. But number 8 is to be confident. And confidence comes from within, but you can at least put on a little bit of a show by speaking confidently. Having a mindset of confidence and of being an expert changes everything. And it's funny because the other day my mother-in-law was visiting and she was in the other room while I had a Zoom meeting with a prospective client. And when I got off the call, she rushed in and she was like, wow. And I was like, wow, what? Like, I thought she was talking about something on TV. And she told me she was so impressed with how confident and in charge that I sounded when I was talking to this group of people. Because she remembers when I would complain about business issues and clients years ago and how I was so not confident about a lot of things. So I told her I was just having a conversation and letting them know what they needed and how I could help them. But I remember the days of when that was hard and it was uncomfortable and it felt unnatural, even though I knew I was good at what I did. And you can be confident, but not really feel that you're an expert. You know, you might compare yourself to other designers. You might see their work and think yours isn't as good as theirs. Or you might think maybe you haven't been doing this work as long as other designers. So in your mind, all you hear is, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to charge more. I'm not good enough to get work for this client. I can't charge as much as this other designer because they've been doing it longer than me. I mean, I hear these things all the time from other designers that I mentor, and I did the same thing for years. But one thing you have to understand is that the word expert doesn't mean that you have to know everything, and no one learns everything overnight. And let me tell you, just because another designer has been doing something longer than you doesn't make them more qualified. In fact, I know a designer who became a designer after having a career as a florist, and she got into accessibility at the same time as graphic design. She taught herself InDesign from the Adobe manual. Her files are better set up than 99% of designers out there, including those who've been using InDesign for 20 years. Plus, there are always things to learn in the accessibility or web development space for sure, where things change or there's actually many sub-areas of expertise. But when you don't have the right mindset, you put yourself on lower ground than clients or maybe even coworkers. Like they're on a pedestal and they're in charge. And you don't consider yourself equal, and then you put yourself right into an order-taking position. But you have to realize that you're on common ground, and you have to believe that. And that also comes into play with your business, not just your work. You know, if a client disrespects you, and that could be paying late, it could be standing you up for a meeting, constantly second-guessing your expertise, then you have to address the issue with them or fire them. Continually putting up with bad behavior means you're allowing someone to treat you this way. And when you allow that, they don't take you seriously. Okay, so those are my tips, and I hope that they're helpful. If you want more help to be seen as an expert and not another order taker, start by getting my free guide, 17 questions to ask during a design consultation, and that will help you start off the process correctly by leading and being the expert. And if you want to go beyond that, check out my brand identity builder, which will give you a solid process for brand identity consultations and the execution of them and delivering them. It includes worksheets and a checklist that you can print out and you have on hand during consultations and a list of resources. But you don't need to be a logo designer to benefit from this information either. I mean, this is 42 pages and it covers what to include in the proposal so that you're seen as an expert and stand out from other designers, what information to get from the client, so you have that objective point of reference, and that results in a smoother relationship. What to think about before you even start designing, so you create a more successful design. What to consider as you're creating a brand identity, so that you ensure that it works for the client and for their audience, and you enhance your expertise as well. And then ways to present your work and address feedback so that you impress the client and you get less pushback. And then how to finalize the logo and create the proper deliverables so you can enhance the value of your work. And then finally, how to showcase your work online in a professional and impressive way so that you can attract better clients. And if you would like one-on-one help with me, go to creative-boost.com/mentoring and inquire about a mentoring session.